Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
A Maryland state trooper is shot around Vienna. Scientists say there's no evidence that offshore wind farms cause whale deaths. An Ocean View church stumbles over their doctrine on homosexuality. And for Women's History Month, a look at The Great Gatsby from Daisy's point of view. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. We're Roundup this afternoon. In our studio is Greg Bassett, editor and general manager of the Salisbury Independent newspaper. On the phone, Susan Canfor, reporter for Coastal Point and a contributor to the Salisbury Independent. Welcome to the program.
Hey, Don.
Hi, Don.
So, Greg, I want to turn to you. And what do we know about this recent shooting of the state trooper?
Yeah, it's been a rough couple of years here now, 18 months for police officers in our county. This was a trooper from the Easton Barrack who was pursuing a car across the Vienna Bridge, headed eastbound into Wycomico County. He tried to pull the car over, tried to get the car to stop from the passenger side of the car. It was in the left lane, and some shots rang out. The trooper was hit 3 different times through the window while driving. Fairly minor injuries. He was taken to Tidal Health Peninsula Regional, but he was released the same day. They said his safety vest, certainly protected him. Then finally, they were able to apprehend or stop the car near where the scales are in Vienna. And then the car took off again, was found later in Delmar. There was a chase. There was a crash. There had been 3 people in the car. By this time in Delmar, there was just the one person in the car, the driver, and the driver apparently died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And then later, they arrested 2 men in Hebron who they believe were in the car at the time.
Do we have any sense about the motivation at this point?
No, just a traffic stop gone wrong, and a kid who had a gun. The suspect is 23 years old. Did a little background check on him. He's kind of been in trouble with the law. His father just recently passed away at a very young age. So there's definitely some trauma in that family, and we'll be looking more into it.
So speaking of law enforcement lines, I understand that the Wycomico County Sheriff Mike Lewis is in his final term.
Yes. He has not told us anything, but at the very end of a rather routine chamber luncheon recently, he announced that he was not going to be running for re-election. He was just re-elected in November, so he's got another 4 years in, 3.5, 4 years to go. But what a tenure he's had, and this is something that I really need to do more reporting on to find out what's up with Mike. He's one of those people, a figure in the county, leader in the county, who can do anything that he wants. He can run for pretty much any public office and be an automatic contender. He's not that old. I think Mike is 57 or 58 years old. So, he's got a lot of good years ahead of him. But 20-year career in the state police, 20 years here as sheriff, really remarkable career.
Any sense about where he might go from here?
No. There's always been talk that, that he might want some sort of a legislative seat, that there's talk for a while he might want to be county executive. But what's going on in his office right now is they're building this brand new public safety building in East Salisbury, and without sounding critical, it's going to be a Taj Mahal. It's going to be very, very nice, and it's going to be a testament to him and his success as someone who can get money for the department and raise awareness for what their needs are. So it's going to be a really great contribution to the county. It's going to cost a lot of money, and there's some concerns about that. It's going to cost as much as one of our schools, but it's something that office has needed for a long time. And in terms of the care about public safety issues in this county, the level of concern matches the greatness that this building will have.
Now, I understand that during his address to this chamber, he talked about the issue of legalized cannabis. What did he have to say? And he also, in addition, he criticized the civilian oversight boards.
Yeah, he's very opposed to the legalization of the cannabis, which is making its way right now through the General Assembly. It seems like a done deal. They're arguing about some of the technicalities about how it will be rolled out. But he's always seen it as one of those, bridge crimes where people start engaged in that, and then they ramp up. And then conduct that occurs when people are high on drugs. He's always been very concerned about that. And he led an effort with the state's attorney about 1.5 years ago to make it illegal to be in a car, smoking the marijuana in the car, even if you have the doctor's permission note, the permit or whatever, because it really confuses them when they make a traffic stop about what's going on, whether people are smoking and whether it dictates their performance behind the wheel. That never really advanced before the county council. Maybe it'll come back up again, but he's always been very anti-marijuana.
And also the civilian oversight boards.
Yeah, there are a lot of problems with the civilian oversight boards. There was just a report before the county council this last week about how that's going. There's some issues with the people that have been appointed showing up, the expertise, and the state mandated this, and the requirements that they put on this are so stringent that a lot of the counties are having trouble meeting it. And then also the boards are having to deal with cases that probably shouldn't have gotten to a board phase and are taking a lot of time. So there's a lot of that. There's always, police officers, like anybody, any professional, is always hesitant to allow people who are not part of your profession to sort of rule on how you've performed. In my profession, the readers certainly respond to how I do things. But, I don't know about police work, so am I really the one to comment and make a determination about whether police acted correctly or not? That seems to be the heart of the matter with these police boards. The
other thing, by the way, about his tenure is he was a big supporter of, a Second Amendment, sort of a free zone, as it were. Tell me a little bit about that, because that's one of the last things I remember actually hearing from him, and he was very vocal about it, even though guns obviously are a danger to his own deputies. Yeah, I have to admit I've never understood his point on the Second Amendment sanctuary ideas and the idea that that more people should have access to guns, being the fact that so many guns are being used against police officers, and I think it would hamper what they do or make what they do even more dangerous. But he's always been very much of a Second Amendment proponent and the idea of a armed militia, and that hasn't changed. He's very, very pro-gun. Susan, I want to turn to you, and there's apparently an effort to break away from the Mariners United Methodist Church in Ocean View over the Methodist doctrine when it comes to defining homosexuality being incompatible with Christian teachings. What are we hearing on that end?
Yes, they haven't broken away yet, Don. They are voting. The members are voting Saturday, and we should have the results Saturday afternoon, and I'll certainly update you on those results next week if we're able to get them. The members of Mariners Bethel United Methodist Church in Ocean View are voting about whether or not to disassociate, is the word they're using, from the main United Methodist Church. For the past several months, the members have been meeting with each other. They've brought in guest speakers, and they've been prayerfully and thoughtfully, they say, considering how they will vote. And as you said, the issue is not whether or not the main church leaders are being true. The issue is whether or not the church leaders are being true to what they call their Book of Discipline. That's because the Book of Discipline clearly states the church is opposed to homosexuality and same-sex marriage. Their belief is that marriage should only be between a man and a woman. But the main church leaders have allowed some bishops in the church, not in Ocean View, but in other churches nationwide, to be ordained. Bishops who are in same-sex marriages and bishops who are married. And they have allowed them to be ordained and to serve. Dennis Rader, he's the chairman of the Pastor Parish Relations Committee at Mariners in Ocean View. He told me the results should be in and tallied by Saturday afternoon. If the vote is to disassociate, Mariners will either become an independent church or become a member of another denomination, and that will be decided later. Mr. Rader said everyone is welcome at that church, including homosexuals and those in same-sex relationships and marriages. He said that isn't really the point. The point is that the church leaders are not being true to that all-important Book of Discipline. So we will certainly keep you updated once those vote results are in, Don.
Let me ask you this. How does he then balance this between, it seems there's almost a contradiction. On the one hand, he seems to be essentially saying that in the leadership, you can't be gay. In the membership, you can be. I mean, those seem to be in conflict. If the doctrine is that homosexuality is incompatible with Christian teachings, why would they then welcome them into the church?
Exactly. You and I think a lot alike, because that's exactly, almost word for word, when I asked him when we talked, and he said that homosexuals are welcome in the church and that everybody has sinned and everybody is broken in some way. So I guess he considers homosexuals broken. And when I asked him that, he kind of just paused and kind of said, but didn't give me a direct answer. He just said he has friends and relatives who are homosexuals. He's not a bigoted man. The church is not bigoted, but they want to go by that Book of Discipline, and they feel that the church should abide by it too. So he never really gave me a straight answer, but he did say everybody is welcome in the church regardless of their sexual orientation.
So we expect that if indeed they decide to disassociate, then they're going to go their own way, because obviously this is about leadership, not necessarily about the congregation itself.
Right. They could become independent, or they could become a member of another denomination. And apparently this disassociation, some churches call it disaffiliation, it's been happening nationwide with a lot of the United Methodist churches. And some of them just go off on their own to become their own church, and others join a different denomination. But they break away completely from the mother church, from the main United Methodist Church.
Greg, I want to turn to you. Former Governor Larry Hogan has said he will not seek the Republican nomination for president in 2024. He said the stakes were too high in what he called a multi-car pileup, with obviously a number of non-Trump candidates expected to enter the race. And he sharply attacked what he called the excesses of elite policies on the left, but then cautioned against, quote, angry, divisive, and performative politics. What do we make of this? Is it a surprise that he has decided not to run? But second, what do you make of his critique?
Yeah, I figured he would get in and test the waters farther and then decide not to run. But it just shows that moderate Republicans like Larry Hogan don't have a home in the Republican Party anymore. It's really tragic because he is a great leader with great potential, and I actually think he would be a great president. You show, when you look at what he did in Maryland in a bipartisan way, working with Democrats and Republicans alike to get so much accomplished. It's just mind-boggling that there's no home for him in the current makeup of the party. And he's a reasonable guy. He's not on any extreme at all. Has showed complete competence in his executive leadership, but there's like I said, there's just no home for him.
Because, well, one of the things that benefited, it seemed to me, during his tenure was the fact that he did not have to deal with social issues, abortion and such, because those were already laid to rest with the previous administrations and obviously a Democratic-controlled state legislature. If he had dipped his toe into that race, he would have been confronted with those issues that he had not necessarily been confronted with when he was governor. Yeah,
he wasn't able to distinguish himself on culture war matters, but you see what he did with the Freddie Gray stuff in Baltimore, how he reacted to that, which was pretty competent. He was given good grades on his performance with the pandemic. Republicans thought maybe he was too harsh, but I think he took the proper ground in terms of trying to protect our caregivers from being overwhelmed by COVID patients early on. His spending was very much in check. He kept the General Assembly in check with that. He had very difficult relationships, certainly with Thomas V. Mike Miller, the Senate president, and Michael Bush, who was the Speaker of the House. Those people changed, and even through that transition, he did well. He got along with Peter Franchot on the Board of Public Works in terms of spending. So he was a leader on things that really mattered in the state, and his tone was always right. Sometimes when he would come out with he would attack Joe Biden, I was always shocked because he was so moderate on so many things, and you would think, what did Joe Biden ever do to make you so angry? But he was still a Republican, and that was what part of what he had to do in his game plan. But at the same time, just a lot of competence. Some failings, but a lot of competence, and he would have made the presidential landscape for the Republicans better, but that's not going to happen now.
So one of the things I wondered about was I saw that particular quote. I was thinking, well, is he talking about a Governor Ron DeSantis? Is he talking Nikki Haley? I mean, it seems to me that Republican politics, at least on the presidential level and on the national level, does seem to be angry, divisive, and performative in its nature anyway. And Ron DeSantis certainly has been carrying the culture wars pretty heavily. I mean, I'm not sure I see anybody on the horizon here.
No, Haley is, she's doing her kicking forward, not kicking sideways stuff. It seems like she's trying to position herself to be someone's vice presidential pick. And DeSantis is in culture war. If you want to fight about Disney and gay rights and that kind of stuff, I guess that's something to fight about. But you got to wonder if that's really what political leaders should be doing with their time, kind of shepherding culture wars.
Speaking of politics, of course, we have the Wicomico County Executive, Julie Giordano. She's going to be coming up on her first 100 days. What do we expect to hear from her, and how do you rate it? Yeah, she's going to celebrate it with a State of the County speech next Thursday, so we'll all be there for that, reflecting on her 100 days. She's had some victories. She's got some of the personnel in that she wanted. She's not able to get some of the other personnel in that she wanted. There's definitely been some issues with the county council where them not seeing eye to eye. She's had a little more success in the legislature.
I think still one of the big issues that we're all watching, and we want to make sure that she doesn't fall down on, is this issue of the sewer service, the sewer commission in Wycomico County. The commission has been approved by the General Assembly, so they're off and running on that. That could end up being the most important thing that she does. She's protected things like the airport. We're all going to look forward to her budget coming up to see where her spending priorities are, and how she's going to handle that. Whether she's going to ask for a tax cut, things like that. But so far, so good. But these personnel things have really caused some derision with the council.
What about the tension between the county council and her nomination, particularly of somebody like Dan Cox? Do you think we expect any of that to emerge in her speech?
Yes, I think she's the type to confront these things head on. So I don't think she's going to slide around any issue. If she's got a problem, she's going to talk about that. But I think she'll, it's a state of the county thing. So it should be upbeat. It should talk about the economic potential of the county and what they're doing to try to make things even better. She'll probably preview her budget. It should be mostly a positive speech, but she's going to perhaps, I think if I was her advisor, I would say that she should call upon the council to help her, in her goals and not make it harder for her to get the things accomplished that she wants to. But she's going to have to do that behind the scenes lobbying on her own to win them over. And there are a lot of issues with that. I did hear a rumor finally. She made a point in the campaign of saying that she would sit at the table each week with the council and be there to engage them in conversation. Well, there's a reason that previous county executives did not sit at the table, because there was tension and because the council would sort of call on the executive as if the executive was an employee of the council. So I've heard that she's not going to go to the table as much now. So that might remove her from the opportunity for conflict. That might help. But we'll see. Certainly, we're looking forward to seeing what she says on Thursday.
Susan, I turn to you. Selbyville, new mayor, what's going on?
Yes, on Monday evening, the little town of Selbyville is a very quickly growing town in Delaware. It's going to get its first new mayor in more than 30 years. For the past 3 decades, Mayor Clifton Murray, in his soft-spoken, gentlemanly way, and he speaks with a deep Eastern Shore twang, very gentlemanly, very precise, and just a typical Eastern Shore gentleman. He has been there for over 30 years, leading the meetings. And this year, Mayor Murray, who's now in his late 70s, he decided not to run for re-election, but to step aside for a new mayor and also 2 new council members who are considerably younger. Only 3 of them ran for 3 seats. So the town canceled the election, and on Monday, the 3 people who ran will all be sworn in. The mayor will be the longtime council president, Richard Duncan, who has been on the council for, probably 30 years, probably as long as the mayor's been on the council. He will take over as mayor. And Chris Snyder and Gary Steffen, who are also both newcomers, they will assume the 2 new council seats vacated by Bud Tingle and Frank Smith. And this will be a big change for this little town. It's growing so quickly. Mayor Murray is a 7th-generation Selbyville native. He told me a lot of people have told him they're very disappointed he won't be back. He really didn't resign. He didn't say anything at his last council meeting. He said he just wanted it to play out, and everybody would figure it out when they realized that he was there to swear in a new mayor, which is coming up in a few days. He said he's ready to let the younger members take over, but he'll be there for the swearing in, and he said he's willing to serve on committees and offer advice or help in any way he can if he's needed. He's definitely going to be missed on.
Do we expect any direction shift for the city itself? I'm given the fact that the person who's been filling in the shoes has been there a long time as well.
Yes, he has. Richard Duncan has been there a long time, so I don't think you'll see much of a shift, except that there's so much growth so fast. And there are a lot of parcels of land that owners are asking to be annexed into the town of Selbyville. So there won't be a change in the shift. It's more a growth-related change in Selbyville. But they have some big items coming up. They're building a big new water tower. They just refurbished the town park, which was pretty much closed and dead for many years. And they put in new pickleball courts and a playground and lights for play at night. So they're trying to refurbish the town. There's a lot of talk about refurbishing the downtown. Some of the buildings are very old and have been empty for a long time. So I think we'll see a lot of new things coming. And some of these things will be things the older members of the council have never had to deal with. So it's good that we have 2 newer, younger members who come from bigger cities, who probably know how to tackle these problems better than these guys do. But they're all very dedicated, and they're all very willing to work hard together. They get along very well, and they work well together.
Finally, Greg, I want to turn to you because you had a big piece on whales, and there's a big push now for legislation in Annapolis to expand offshore wind energy. I think more than half of one of the key committees out there, a House committee, is co-sponsoring the legislation. It's got support by business leaders, organized labor, environmental groups, etc. But we didn't have this call for moratorium to examine the impact on whales, most prominently, obviously, by Eastern Shore Republican Congressman Andy Harris. Now, you had a strong headline on your paper which said, "No evidence linking wind projects with whale deaths." Tell me what you found.
Yeah, well, NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, has concluded that there's no relationship between these testing programs for windmill towers and whale deaths. There's no connection at all. Andy Harris, and to a degree, the mayor of Ocean City, Rick Mahan, is saying, well, they're using this as a reason to sort of delay the offshore wind. These guys are opposed to offshore wind for very legitimate reasons. They're just opposed to it and for the business and for the effect on tourism in Ocean City. So they're using the whale deaths as a reason to prolong this or delay it. But there is no evidence. There was just a news release today. Congressman Harris is going to a hearing in Wildwood, New Jersey next week on this very issue. New Jersey, there's a lot of opposition up there as well to their wind farms. So they're sort of using this concern for the whales to as a diversionary tactic, I think, not to be too cynical. But you see, just recently, Harris, there was a issue with whales and boats that participate in the White Marlin Open. They want to put speed limits on these things because these big ocean-going yachts, because they've hit whales in the past and they don't want them to hit whales. And Harris was opposed to that. It's fine to run over the whales, but we need to save the whales on behalf of the wind. So there's some contradictions there, but we'll watch it. But right now there is no evidence at all linking this.
Because one of the thing that struck me about Harris' statement, he says no scientific evidence proving that these projects are not contributory to the cause of the deaths of the whales. So the absence of evidence,
right?
I mean, I'm trying to get my head around what he's saying.
He's saying there's nothing to prove that it's not. So there's nothing to prove that it is, and his counter is, well, there's nothing to prove that it's not.
Also, I understand that there has been a growing number, though, of whales being at least dying. We know that. What do we, as you talk about the reasons for why perhaps this might be happening? Yeah,
NOAA has a million different scenarios for how that could be explained based on some changes in the tidal effects that cause these whales to wash ashore when maybe they would have sunk out in the ocean before, to some dietary things on the whales, to the number of whales. Apparently, the population is growing, so there's more potential for more whales to be detected in this manner. So there's lots of the circumstantial evidence that they're pointing to. They don't have like one root cause for this right now, but they're going to keep researching it, and that's what NOAA does.
The other thing you talk about is these sort of exclusionary zones around ships where they have gear so that they don't run into the whales. And they have a thing called a high-resolution survey process as opposed to the old process. Explain that to us.
I don't know about that like I should. I only know what I've read about it, but the idea is that each boat is equipped with some sort of a radar so they can see where these things are, and that might make it easier for them to maneuver around these things. But it's also a timing of the year thing. When the whales come through, their schedule is pretty much predictable in terms of when they'll make their way through the mid-Atlantic and at what depth that they're going to be traveling. So there is some indication of when you're going to confront a whale as opposed to when you're not.
Right, because I understand that these things are much different than or less powerful than, say, the seismic air guns.
Yes, very, very much.
Well, we were speaking with Greg Bassett. He's the editor and general manager of the Salisbury Independent newspaper. Also on the phone with us has been Susan Canfor, reporter for Coastal Point and a contributor to the Salisbury Independent. Appreciate you guys stopping by and chatting with us this afternoon.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Don.
You're listening to Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush.
Delmarva Today with Don Rush.